Welcome, Glen Providence, to the Dish with Dina podcast. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to spend
Thank
with me today.
you. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
I'm really excited to chat because I was just telling you before we, officially hit record that this has been a few months in the making of trying to get our schedules to coordinate. So
Yeah,
I've been learning a lot about you. I've been watching a lot of what you've been doing, and I'm so excited to finally have you give us some behind the scenes information and learn a little bit more about what you do on a
yeah,
personal level.
yeah.
So walk us, I always like to start with an origin story, Glenn. So walk us through a little bit about how did you even get to where you are right now? Like what were things that you found in your personal life, your formative years? Did that set the tone or put you on the path to where you
Not
see
at all.
now? Not at all. Okay,
Not
tell
at
us
all.
tell us about it.
There is nothing that I've done in educationally wise, personally. There was nothing that prepared me for this. I think this was just God saying, I need you here and go. And that's how it happened. I started out here at Ebony as a volunteer almost 17 years ago. Um, I was I went to college in Minnesota, graduated from the University of Minnesota. I was doing IT work back then, and worked for companies like Target and Kraft Foods and General Mills. And I just knew that I was going to be a corporate C-suite executive one day, maybe somewhere in New York, maybe, somewhere out west. Um, and that's when my career of being a Hollywood actor all fell apart. But that's a whole other story. Um, but that's kind of how that all came together. And I had lived in Minnesota. Remember that whole Y2K scare situation? Um, I got a promotion to, of all places, Buffalo, New York. Ended up in Buffalo, New York, and I was there for about 7 years, which was supposed to be 2 years. And ended up meeting my wife there, having uh two kids, and that became my life. And after about 6 years into this, it was like this was not supposed to be the story. At 25, I had gone to more retirement parties than birthday parties. I was working for a utility, natural gas utility in Buffalo, New York, and the goal was you get a job like that. And at that point, I had transitioned to communications role. I was assistant director of corporate communications for that company, and after about 7 years, there was one day where it was probably about 10 degrees outside, and I was trying to balance my 10-month-old son into a snowsuit. And I said, I can't do this anymore. There has got to be a better life. And so I have an older brother that lives in Fort Lauderdale, and his son was turning 1, and he was having a baptism for his son. And we flew down, and it was a Sunday morning, and I got dressed before everyone, and I stepped outside, and it was probably 72 degrees, sunshine. He has palm trees, and I said, "That's it. I don't care what happens. I'm moving to Florida." So I moved to Florida in 2007, and so in Orlando specifically, and it was just trying to figure things out, and eventually I landed up here at Ebony.
So you were like sold, and it couldn't have been better, a better
Right,
marketing, a better marketing
right,
ploy tactic
right,
for you.
right, right.
So share with us first. I want to ask you also, give us who you are right now. You're the
Yes,
executive director, and tell us a little bit about
yes.
that. And I also want to chime in a little bit too about what you just mentioned and some of the past opportunities that you kind of saw
Yeah,
coming your way.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So I'm currently the executive director here at Ebony Nutrition. We are a officially 30-year-old nonprofit organization founded by registered dietitians, where our motto is simple. We help people eat better with all the consumption that I'm glad you can't hear. going on. What makes us unique is we have test kitchens in our office. We really focus on underserved communities and getting them back into the kitchen. We have a focus on diet-related diseases, which are more prevalent in underserved communities. So we work on people who are misdiagnosed or undiagnosed with diabetes and hypertension and obesity, and try to place them into the different programs that we have to improve on their overall health, teach them to be better self-managers of their overall health.
Really embracing and empowering and advocating all of
Yeah,
those things because sometimes people
yeah,
don't know what they don't know,
it's
or
bingo.
they might
Yeah,
hear things from their doctors or their cousins or YouTube,
right. That's it.
and not necessarily that's
That's
not
it.
valid information. And so, Glenn, I wanted to ask you too. So, what you were saying before, and this is always what I love about these conversations, especially when people did not start, because I'm a second career. I did not start out as
Mm,
a dietitian fresh out of
yeah.
high school and college. I love what threads and skills and experiences you
Mm-hmm.
might have seen come up along the way that you feel now fit in very well with what you do. Can you share us with
Right.
a little bit about that, whether it's
Right.
administrative or leadership or the communication part of it too?
That's a great question, Dina, because my undergrad is in marketing and communications, and working for a nonprofit organization, it is all about storytelling. It is about the job that you can do. And the best nonprofits, I call it the tiny violin story. They're able to take their cause and boil it down to a tiny violin story and be able to successfully communicate that to get volunteers, to get funding, to get people to be part of their tribe and to support what they're doing. So that work all during my undergrad definitely was a direct line to what I'm doing here. Because every day, my if I'm doing my job correctly, I am doing podcasts with you, and I'm out in the community. I'm talking to elected officials. I'm talking to corporate executives for corporate wellness initiatives. I'm really telling the story about who Ebony is and how we can collaborate and work together to help the community at large.
I absolutely love that. So it's about paying attention to opportunities and also, this is another theme that kind of comes up sometimes too, fearlessness. I think a lot of times
Right,
people are afraid to step outside of their comfort zones or take
right,
chances or retire, not retire, or quit a job and move on to something else that
right,
they're not sure if they're
right.
qualified for. But like you
Wow,
said, you kind of look for the signs and the opportunities
you
that
do,
put everything in
you
place.
do. I mean, with you saying that, not even knowing my entire story, but I was working for corporate retail, and with a merger going on, I was supposed to reapply for a job that I already had. And there was something inside of me that said, you know what? I think this is a sign. I think this is an opportunity for me to try something new. I never knew in a million years that it would be this, because it was literally my last week of working. Um, and I could have had a nonchalant, non caring attitude. And I said, let me go out with a bang. And I assisted a customer who eventually introduced me to the founders of Ebony Nutrition. If it weren't for that interaction, I'm not here. So the gentleman was running for a state senator position at the time. Um, in that whole communication thread, I was working on his communication team as a part of his campaign team, helping put flyers together and all the background path that you could think with someone running for a political seat. And he lost the race, but at the end of it, introduced me formally to the founders at Ebony, and they were having the ribbon cutting um, event for the building that we're in right now. And he said, "Can you help them out with the grand opening?" And so I got to meet them, work on building a database to invite folks, communications, helping designing flyers and emails and things like that. And almost in January, it'll be 17 years. My inside joke is this has been the longest volunteering experience in history. I think I could win a Guinness uh, award for doing that.
Sticking it out. I love that. I want to talk a little bit too, because in the current, time of our recording, it's at the end of October, it's
Yeah,
2025. There's a lot of volatility going on with funding and programs and policies, and especially
yeah,
in the healthcare, nutrition world.
right,
It feels a little bit unsettling. And I'm curious
very much
too,
so.
what you were just mentioning, as you can see, I'm always writing notes down of
Yeah,
your your thoughts on community and networking. Like, how do we not fall on despair, and how do we continue moving forward with helping empower, helping advocate, and strengthening the things that we want to see continue, we want to see that are working and being successful? Share with us a little bit
right.
about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, very scary times. We are witnessing, I think, sometimes it's cliche. We're living in times that we've never seen before, but it's real and it's happening. I have colleagues, just yesterday I was watching an interview of a colleague on the news who gets federal funding that he literally said that for the next 2 months she's okay, but come December, she doesn't know what she's gonna get. She doesn't know what's gonna happen. Um, you've always heard of, or I've always heard that, when life gives you lemons, you got to take lemonade, you make lemonade, but not with a lot of sugar as a dietitian. Um, but what we're looking at is how can we look at this unique time? Because the fact of the matter is, people are still going to be diagnosed with diabetes. They're still going to be dealing with these diet related comorbidities. And I think because of that, we need to be even bolder, more intentional in our work. I think we need to even reach out to the community as a whole even more. I think we need to look for even more collaborations. And these are collaborations outside of the typical funding stream, that we would go to. I think we need to go to construction companies. We need to go to banks. We need to go to, whomever, and think outside the box and say, this is what we're doing. Because um, 10 years ago, we started a mobile farmers market called Fresh Stop. We took a retired city bus. We took out all the seats and we go to food desert neighborhoods and we provide increased access to fresh produce in these underserved areas. That was bold. That was a bold move, and a lot of people were questioning why we did that. But that set the stage for us to have a direct connection with these communities. So how do we use all these tools and assets and resources that we have to really, when things are looking bleak and it's a dismal scene out there, that we could be even brighter and be even a more beacon of light for the community that we live, work, and serve in.
Being creative, messaging,
Yeah,
outsourcing, and like you said, continuing getting that communication and collaboration and that networking. Sometimes we forget that it takes a village in order to help
right.
sustain us.
Absolutely.
And it is the gift that keeps on giving. The more we can
Right.
broaden those, what I call like those concentric circles, as we keep broadening
Right.
them out, you never know who might have somebody who knows somebody, or somebody who has some extra
That's
funds lying
exactly
around.
it.
I love
That's
it.
exactly it. That's
I love
exactly
it.
it. The unfortunate part about that, the other side of that coin, however, is the way that the nonprofit world is structured. It's unfortunate because if you've ever done nonprofit work, it is here's what happens. Nonprofit 101. You have 1,000 nonprofits in a city, and a funder will come out with an RFP, and they say, "All right, we have $1 million, and we want to disperse it to help, the community." So of these 1,000 nonprofits, a couple hundred of them will write a grant, and only 10 of those nonprofits are going to get the grant. So that fosters an environment of competition rather than collaboration. So here in Orlando, they are some of the most fantastic nonprofits that exist. I think I'm fortunate to live in a community where I think any need that needs to be fulfilled, you can find equality, and not just a nonprofit that exists, that just rolled up on the scene last night, a quality nonprofit that provides work. However, us kind of sitting at the table and shaking hands and really working to improve the community is few and far between. Unless there is funding that forces us to collaborate in a natural, kind of cohesive way, it really doesn't happen.
Yeah, that can definitely be the challenge. By the way, for our audience who is not familiar with some of the lingo, RFP is a request for
What's the
proposal where a
proposal?
bid
I'm
goes
sorry.
out and then we can
Yeah,
and then we compete and we select. And sometimes, Glenn, it's not always just like the one who does the most for the least amount of money. Sometimes there's quality versus quantity in there too, or
absolutely.
experience as well as built into
Absolutely.
that. Yeah, so that's
Absolutely.
positioning ourselves and also having
Right.
a plan B. And I
Right.
think this brings me to I want to find out a little bit more about you behind the scenes in an administrative role. So, what is a
Right.
current week in the life of you? Because, like you said, you have a title
Oh
as an
my God.
executive director. You're doing a podcast
Yeah.
with me. You're out there shaking hands with
Right.
people. What does your what does your schedule look like on a personal level?
What I love about it is I've been I don't think I've ever experienced two similar days here in almost 17 years. Every day is different, and I've worked on some of the most exciting projects you could ever think about. To some of the most mundane, because as a nonprofit executive with a small budget, you wear every hat. I've done the IT work and cabling here. I've taken out the trash. I've mopped when when it's needed. But if I'm doing my job correctly, my job day in the life of Glenn as the executive director of Ebony is really kind of take that step back and always have that 10,000 foot view about how we're operating, the space that we're operating in, and then what currently, but then what is coming down the pipe? What is happening in the next 6 months? What's happening in the next year? What's happening in the next 3 years? And a look on staffing and how do we support those potential changes that may be coming. Um, how do we make ourselves an employer of choice so we have employees that are happy to come to work and they feel supported and they have the tools and the resources that they need. But then it's also me not being in the office and getting on other people's calendar and scheduling tours for people to come here and for us to go out and really um, be intentional about getting people to know who we are. My job is to be, if you were to, if I'm doing my job right, again, it's not the executive director, it's really being a chief storyteller and really being out there. And so it's the day-to-day stuff, making sure that, there's funding in place, make sure that the employees are safe and all the ancillary things that go in administratively to make sure that we are operating correctly. There is insurance as a nonprofit, all the different licenses and things that we have to have in place, making sure those are all set. But my week consists of connecting with people. That's what that's what I believe my job is. So if you look at my calendar, it's a series of meetings. It's meetings after meetings after meetings. And sometimes I go into a meeting and I have no idea why I'm there until I get there and it's kind of, oh, okay, now I know why I'm here. I could talk about that.
I'm cracking up because I've said this before in a few other episodes. I come from a project management background, and I used to work with the Department of Health as well and some other places
Mm,
that have a lot of moving parts going on.
right,
And my role has always been to have some sort of management over who does what by when, right? Regardless of
right,
what I was doing. And so my big joke slash true thing is no, I always say no agenda, no attenda. If you don't tell
right,
me what I'm showing up for, I don't know how to show up prepared. So I
right.
think it's funny that you trust in the system, you trust in your team to know why
Yes,
they're sending you to places.
exactly,
And I think
exactly.
this also speaks to again, I'm scribbling like keywords down of you're working in and also on your
Right.
organization. Like you're
Yes,
not a not opposed to getting your hands dirty, but you also know that you're
Can't.
delegating to a strong support system as well, because you can't do everything yourself. Like there's going to be a part
Right.
where you have to delegate before you spread yourself too thin. So
Right.
what are some of the boundaries for you? Like are you a hard stop at a
Ooh.
certain time, no weekends? Like tell me what you I mean, I will
Wow.
also just clarify this and caveat this
Yeah.
by saying it's always probably in your head somewhere is doing something, but where do
Yeah.
you feel you have some places where you're like, all right, I need some Glen time?
You know what? It ever since COVID, one of the things that we implemented on the return from COVID is Fridays we work remotely. Um, and I think that has been great for the staff. It's been just a break because Monday through Thursday we go hard. There is a lot that we pile in um, to those days. Now, if we need to come in on a Friday, then by all means, um, we need to. But um, I don't think from a mental health perspective that um it's wise to not have that break. So on top of all of this, um I- they probably didn't share with you. I kind of have a devil and an angel situation going on here, and I'll tell the story because like I mentioned COVID. During COVID, I had some personal things going on, and I was looking for a creative outlet. And we have again a beautiful test kitchen out front, which is also a commissary kitchen. So we have different companies that food related companies that have come here, caterers and chefs and different things like that. We have some very talented people, and I know I couldn't compete with them with trading, recipes and things like that. So I found an ice cream class and I took it and fell in love with the process of making homemade ice cream. And it started out as just an outlet. And during COVID, my little hobby grew into a business called Smile Ice Cream. And SMILE is an acronym for simply making individuals laugh every day. That story goes back to my mom. We had one of those old school salt, rock salt, yes. And it wasn't every day, it wasn't every week, it was probably once a month, maybe once every other month. But when my mom pulled that thing out, you knew it was going to be a good day. Everyone's mood changed, and I just believe that when people say, let's go get some ice cream, that's a magical moment that is created. You're either celebrating something or you're trying to cheer somebody up. So on the weekends, when I'm not here, I a I own an ice cream company. So I'm making people smile on the weekends. And so I probably need more boundaries. So I love vacations, but I really, and when I'm looking for my next chapter and what I'm gonna do, my hope is that you'll see me on TV somewhere as a ice cream guru some one of these days.
Speak it into existence for sure.
Right, right,
Well,
right,
you're also I love what you said too, because this marries that balance or that harmony. I think a lot of times people who are so passionate about what they do, who live and breathe
right,
their work, and there's a lot of blurred
right.
lines across that you
Yeah,
had an outlet, and in that it also turned into a business, but it was a different focus. I mean, it was food
right.
related, but it was a different
Yeah,
focus.
a different focus. Yeah.
And Glen, when I first started, I was telling you before we hit record, when I first started this podcast was about 5.5 years ago. It actually started as a discussion around earliest childhood memories of food and
Oh,
that thing. And so
wow.
what you're talking about right now really
Yeah,
speaks to
yeah,
me. We used to
yeah.
live in a two family with my grandma and my mom and
Mm-hmm.
dad, and exactly what you said. When they took certain machines out, we were like, "Woohoo, there's a party gonna
Yes,
happen." We
you
were
know it.
so excited to get our
You
hands
know
in
it.
there and create,
Right.
bake and cook and whatever. It brought back a
There
lot
it
of
is.
memories for me.
There it is.
Yeah, I love
There it
it.
is.
Because that is
There
the
it
true
is.
connection, right? Everybody, we
Yeah,
hopefully everybody eats and has a connection with food, and I think that's also going
that's
back
it.
to your mission at Ebony
Right.
as well. Let's talk a little bit too about a current hot trend or topic or things that you see come up most often that you'd either like to rejoice about or clarify or debunk? Are there things that just kind of like seem to always come up a lot in conversations that you have that you find yourself going over and over again and either having to clarify something or again engaging in conversation that you're really excited about?
There's a couple of different ways that I'd like to answer that question. With the first being going back to really kind of carving that path for where Ebony is going in the next, 3 to 5 years. We're working on some strategic planning. Um, I mentioned that our building is under construction, and when it's done, knock on wood, hopefully by the end of this year, we are going to launch a grab and go cafe where we are going to be repurposing produce from our fresh stop bus. If tomatoes are going bad, we might make tomato soup or some kind of tomato and feta salad or something like that. If kale is going bad, we'll blanch it and make kale salad with the goal of creating a zero waste food environment. What I've learned is we deal with underserved populations, food insecure neighborhoods where there's no major grocery stores. There is a thought and a belief that the people that live in those neighborhoods don't care about their health and they don't care about their food. And that's a fallacy. That's not true. And these people want access to quality food, quality produce. Of course, there is the income issues that go along with that, but they care about where their food comes from. The number one question that we get asked when we go on our fresh shop is, where's the produce from? So if you stop and pay attention to that, we're going to a community center where 95% of the families are below the poverty level, but you're asking me where the produce comes from, that means you have a vested interest in where your food comes from. They want to do better, but all the restrictions that are placed on them, access to no major grocery stores in their neighborhood, transportation plays an issue. And so that's a fallacy that exists that we're trying to debunk. Lately, and I'm sure you're keenly aware of this, is this whole movement behind food is medicine. And so what we're trying to do is to create structures where we call it where the healthy is built in, where people don't have to think about being healthy. Our ultimate goal is if we write the next 10 years of where Ebony goes, I want to create a grocery store with that mission in mind so that, and I love Frosted Flakes, but you won't find Frosted Flakes in that grocery store because it'll exceed the threshold for sugar. So it's a grocery store with products curated by our dietitian. It's grab and go cafe, and we're helping to solve that question. What's for dinner? We're trying to make eating healthy without using that word healthy because you and I know that scares people. But if people know that like just coming in and supporting us is in turn helping them, that's our goal and what the legacy that I'd like to leave behind.
This makes me feel wonderful and validated, and also tying into a lot of the conversations that we've had on this podcast in the past, where we discuss systemic inequities and the social determinants of health and
Right,
reducing that term of healthism, right? Putting the onus or the responsibility on the individual when so many things are set up against them. So, like you
right,
said, I appreciate that insight into let's continue to check our implicit bias that people who are underserved or in marginalized populations sometimes it's outside of their control. And
correct.
what you're creating to me sounds like a very conscientious approach to again building community, but also fostering what those necessities are and allowing people to alleviate the burden of thinking that they have to
Right,
do it all themselves. It shouldn't be like that.
right. It
And
shouldn't be like that.
I,
Right.
I believe that we could have a part two. Let's get on our soapbox conversation at this point.
Right,
But I
absolutely.
want to keep talking about that too, in the sense that we make a choice in this country to provide or not to provide. And we make a
Right.
choice in our food system to supply you with lesser expensive goods that are also poorer quality. So, like you
Right.
said, nothing wrong, right, with having a flexible eating habits or,
Right.
allowing for ice cream and frosted flakes and stuff.
Right. Right.
There's no reason to put extra sugar, extra salt, and extra fat into our quality food items because it lessens their nutritional
Right.
value, but it also
Right.
decreases their price. So why is everything so expensive to begin
Expensive.
with?
Right.
And
Exactly.
I love the role that you are playing and you are going to continue to play too, Glenn. So thank you
Yeah.
for, again, hopefully
No.
that becomes a nationwide
I.
franchise or
That's
locations or
the
something.
goal.
Mhm.
From your lips to God's ears.
Exactly.
That's the goal. Create a
Exactly.
blueprint and to be able to proliferate it throughout the country. That's the
To
ultimate
implement
goal.
that. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you mentioned too before about juggling some of the things and doing the ice cream and all of that stuff as well, and your
Yeah.
very busy schedule. What would you say are your non-negotiables? Like how do you take care of yourself, whether it's physical, mental, or
Ooh.
time off or vacation? Like what are like if all goes, a little haywire over the course of a day or a week, what do you make sure things get done in your own personal life?
Wow. That is a fantastic question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question. You know what? I think I'm in tune with myself. I think, and there's no time for it. I just know that there's times where I need to shut it down. Beauty of one of the beauty of living in Florida is have you ever been on a cruise? I don't know if you've ever been on a cruise. I love cruising. And what I love about it is that I never get the internet plan while I'm on a cruise. And so for the 7 days that I'm on a cruise, I am able to disconnect. And there is times throughout the year where I know and I could feel it coming where it's like I need to disconnect, where there's no email, there is no phone calls. I just shut down and I need to um uh I love being out in nature. So I love going for walks. Um and a lot of times it's about perspective. And when you think you have when life is bad for you, just change perspective and you could see how things are. And so sometimes you go on a cruise and you might go to another country where if you think you have it bad, you haven't seen poverty until you've gone to some of these other countries. And then you realize I'm on vacation, and of course I have to force myself to stop my mind. Okay, I can't think about this. I need to really stop and enjoy it. But I really do enjoy that. And then there's just days that I weave in there where, and my wife has a hybrid job where she works from home, and so there's days that I just look at the calendar and say, you know what, I think I'll be more productive at home than being in here. So I kind of weave in some of those days.
I ask those questions because, in the grand scheme of things, everybody's juggling everything. We all have
Right,
responsibilities. And obviously there's a spectrum to it, whether you are a student in school, you're managing homework assignments, you might not have a family just yet, or you might not have bills being paid by yourself, maybe your parents are taking care of that. As we get
right.
older, like right now we're in the sandwich generation, we're taking
Sandwich.
care of the
Right,
younger and the older,
right,
we're caregiving
right,
for a lot of things. And I
right.
feel like this puts a lot of pressure on the individual, as we were saying, kind of tying
Absolutely.
into our past conversation of, are we doing enough to make sure it's all
Right.
working properly? But I really feel like even something as simple as just getting to bed at a certain time, or like you said,
Yes,
unplugging every so often, just kind of giving
right.
yourself a break, or going
Have
outside
to.
and just staring off in the distance after being on a
Have
computer for
to.
so long. Really
Yes,
just reconnecting with ourselves that
yes,
good enough sometimes is good enough.
yes. Good enough. Hopping in a car and going for a drive, going
Yeah.
to a new part of town that you haven't been to, going and sitting in front of a body of water and just maybe eating a cone of ice cream or something like that, but just, those little pleasures that, sometimes we take for granted, reading this book about being grounded and the power of just walking barefoot outside and just in your backyard and getting vitamin D from the sun. And, here in Florida, we're always indoors because it's hot outside, but be outdoors. And it's funny, you could take the same route to work every day, but sometimes changing the way you go to work and again change that perspective, or being a passenger and not the driver, you can see things that I did not know that they had just built a house right there on the corner, because we are such creatures of habit that sometimes you just got to break the monotony and just go for a walk.
I have adult children, which is hard to sometimes say because I can't believe that. But my daughter is wrapping up her second year of her master's program. She's working on her master's degree. My son is a senior in college, and they also keep me grounded because I'm so excited about what the future has for them and being able to guide them. So I think family, I'm one of six in my family, and I'm blessed to still have my parents. And whenever my head starts to get big, they bring me back down to earth, you know. I don't know who you think you are, but yeah.
It's good
So
to be
that's fun.
humbled. Your
Right,
support system,
right,
your
right,
circle keeps you humbled.
right.
And I like what you said too before of changing the perspective, changing the environment. And if you are feeling like you're getting caught up too much in things, whether it's a downward spiral or emotions or things feel a little bit overwhelming, understand that there are people out there that are probably dealing with worse. And I think sometimes that's a good opportunity to volunteer for things too, Glenn,
Absolutely,
right? Give back to your
absolutely,
community, get rid of that
absolutely,
ego stuff that you got
absolutely.
going on and just let it go.
I used to work for years ago a youth organization. Again, we live in Orlando, and Orlando is, Florida is in the center, somewhat of central Florida. And so to get to the ocean, you have to drive an hour east or west. And it was funny that you have kids that live in Florida and who had never seen the ocean, had never seen the ocean. And as powerful as that is, taking kids there. I remember one time taking a kid there and they started crying because they didn't really understand when they said the beach. They thought the beach was just a little, and to look and you can see as far right and as far left, and it's just water, and the power and beauty and majesty of that was just a moment for them, you know. So introducing kids to opportunities. I think if there's anything I do next looking for something, it would be creating those kinds of experiences. Make wishes. I volunteer. I'll even and donate my make a wish card, and I donate a lot of my time to those initiatives through my ice cream company to donate and really help make a difference. So yeah.
You're hitting on all of the things. I think that's so important too, that people often think like what, it requires money, but no, sometimes it's just energy or time
Right.
or however it
Correct.
is, or vice versa. Okay, so
Yeah.
maybe I'm unable to physically be someplace, but I can send $10 a month someplace and just be able to support or provide somebody with a child in need who can utilize some of that support. So I love all of these messages, Glenn. As we're coming up on the end of our time together, is there anything that we didn't touch upon? Anything I didn't ask you? Anything that you wanted to share? Final words of wisdoms, etc.
Wow. This has been a great conversation. It's rare that you get the chance to, really talk about yourself like this, about the work that you do, the things that you love. We're living in some really interesting times. Um, and it's unfortunate because again, I know it's cliche, but I believe we as a country, we have more in common than we do than that separates us. And it's sad that divisions because of a title are separating, and there's so much good that can be accomplished if we decide to lay those down and work together. To have these dish with Dina conversations, because that's where it gets lost. We need to connect with each other on a personal level, because once we starts to elevate and you're this and I have that title on and that label on, it's unfortunate. And so when I introduce myself to you, when you introduce yourself, it should be stripped of all of that. And it should be, who are you? What motivates you? I don't even want to know what job you do, but how do you help this world that we live in be a better place? And let's start there and move forward from there.
Oh my gosh, I am goosebumps all over me. I'm this close to crying, Glenn,
Oh
because
no.
yeah, this is a very sensitive conversation. You know, there's
Right.
a lot of external energies that come into play, and I think a lot of times we feel like we have to control all of that or wield something towards that, and it becomes very
Yeah.
overwhelming. But like you said,
Yeah.
focus on just the human interaction
Well,
that's in
yeah.
front of you, that
Yeah.
conversation that you're having with one person, and
Yeah.
then slowly grow.
Yeah. Some of my
Absolutely
best
love it.
um conversations, and I used to struggle going to networking events because it's like, what am I going to say? And I used to always think that I had to, my belief was I had to go in and, well, I'm the executive director at Ebony and I do this. I realized one day that, you know what? I'm going to switch this up. And when I get to these places, I'm not going to ask them because most people have their name tag on. You would ask them, so what do you do for fun? What was your last vacation that you took? Do you have any kids? And I have made more stronger connections that way than asking people what they did in their jobs. Because now you're getting to really meet the person versus the title that they hold and carry.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's so important to understand that too, that underneath it all, whatever your qualifications are that put you in this
Yes,
position, it's different than the human that you are.
exactly.
That's
Exactly.
beautiful, Glenn. Oh
Yeah.
gosh, what a way to end this discussion. I
Great.
appreciate this so much. I have
Thank you.
a two-part question that I always ask everybody, which is a pun intended question. So, Glenn,
Okay.
right now it's a Monday morning-ish leading into, afternoon times, and my question is, what is on your plate today, both figuratively and literally? So what is the next thing that you're working on or doing or going into a meeting? And what's the next thing that you'll be eating today, Glenn?
So the next thing I'm working on is I need to find a home for my team. We're going to be homeless for about 2 weeks because of the construction in our building. We're going to be out of power. So I need to go through my, if anyone remembers this term, Rolodex, and reach out to some community partners and say, help, we need somewhere to relocate for a couple weeks. So that is what I'm working on next in the job. And the next thing that I am going to eat is leftovers. I have tilapia that I brought with me to work. So that's what I'm going to have for lunch. So
Love
yeah,
it. Speaking to the no food waste, right? Bringing things
right,
in and eating
right,
leftovers. Love it. I love
right.
it. Well, Glenn,
Yeah,
this has been an absolute pleasure getting to know more about you
absolutely. It's
and
been a
being able
pleasure
to
to meet you. This has been
thank
great.
you.
Yes.
Thank you. I really appreciate
Yeah.
everything you're doing. I'm so excited to see what the future holds for you, and I can't wait that we establish more relationships and more
Yes,
collaborations.
absolutely.